Yeah,
Cool. Well, Chris, thank you. Well, welcome to the Uncontaminated Sound interviews, um, where, like I said earlier, I try to just have casual conversations regarding different types of artisan crafts, and yeah, there we go. Still adjusting to this this like Zoom format where prior to the pandemic, I was going on location into say musician studios or artisan studios and recording with a handheld, like a camera, which I prefer much better, like face to face, kind of really get their energy from the environments of the creative. But well, thank you for taking the time to uh, join me in a conversation. And
no, absolutely. No, thank you so much, Rob. And it's nice to be in the studio, which is you can see some stuff behind me. But yeah, strange times. Love in-person interviews, but these during these times, it's great to have the opportunity to share, what's going on and just share artwork in general, and let people know there's some hope out there.
well, well, tell me about that. I know you're deep into the artistic community. You're within academia and numerous. I'm sure you have international friends as well,
Yep.
artisan friends. And how are artists around the world or in your circle reacting to this pandemic? Uh,
Well, it's kind of interesting because I work for the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, which is in Ridgefield, Connecticut, not too
yeah.
far away. I'm in North Salem, New York right now, not
Hmm.
too far away from you in Yorktown.
Cool.
But like as of now, we are the museum's pretty much shut down. We're working from home.
Hmm.
This is my lunch break.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's pretty much everything's on hold. But the artists that that I'm friends with and whatnot, we've been trying to keep in touch and do things like this and do like these impromptu studio visits via Zoom and FaceTime and things like that, and just kind of keep the dialogue going and sharing work and just letting people know that we're still out here, because I think such an integral part to the artistic community is that conversation. And if anything, it's kind of interesting now that since most of us are home based, we almost have more time to work on our
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
And some artists, myself, I mean, I'm a bit of an introvert, and as much as my wife loves that, but uh, but I've had more time to focus on what I'm doing and really like develop a more day to day kind of thing.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
Well, what's drastically changed is the experiencing of art too and consumption. It's
yeah,
like, once again, I love going to galleries or exhibits in museums, and it's the space that really energizes, the connection between the artist and the viewer. It's that physicality. It's that's what I love about going to these cultural institutions. And now uh, I feel like, I don't know, in my opinion, it kind of you kind of lose that physical energy, that or that connection between the pieces via a digital experience. But how are museums tackling the curations of the shows now, or are they continuing with digital stuff or virtual exhibits? Or
yeah. It's interesting. I know at the Aldrich in particular, we're continuing with our physical stuff. Sort of planning when we can actually reopen,
hmm,
and we have some great shows going on when we reopen. But for the moment, yeah, it's a lot of it is it's digital, and so many institutions are also they're pulling from their private collections and kind of like highlighting certain items, and now it's a largely digital sort of experience. It's the Instagrammable kind of thing. Which is beneficial right now just to reach out, but at the same time I'm with you on the fact that like you need to go in person and experience the art, and like if you are in a gallery with new oil paintings, smell that like amazing smell from the oil paintings and whatnot. It's a different experience right now. It's a different way of like feeding the fish, so to say.
hmm. No, totally. It's well, I know a bunch of institutions release their archives, or have thousands of thousands upon thousands of I would say archives, I guess, online for free.
Yeah.
But it's like overwhelming. Once again, it's uh, I really love being directed, in a physical space to kind of just go. Whereas the interwebs, the internet is kind of overwhelming. I'm over just the influx of information is just kind of like I don't know where to kind of look, but
Yeah, sometimes it's like it's way too much. So I've certainly had times too where it's like I leave my cell phone upstairs, leave the computer upstairs, don't even turn on my radio in the studio, and just like have a little bit of silence and like a
yeah.
little bit less of like information coming through, and a little bit of calm. And
Mm.
it's, I mean, that's been very much needed right now.
Oh, totally. Like I've been trying myself as well. I'm trying to limit the news consumption because it'll get me into a spiral of like, the world is collapsing. Where I'm like, I can only handle, really deal with my own bubble of like friends, family, relationships, and that's all I can control, right? So it's yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, right now it's, I mean, if anything, art, like for me, just being in the studio and stuff like that has been a little bit of like, it's a meditation to come down here and get away from that. Cause the same kind of thing. I used to wake up every morning and read the New York Times. Now it's like I'll read like just the updates and
Mm.
make sure that's about it. And then it's like, okay, let's get on with our day.
Well, to wrap into your work, you from the broader spectrum down to your own work. Currently, you've recently released your monograph, right? First monograph.
I
Is
did.
that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Super proud of it. A lot of work went into it. It's called Everything is Perfect as It Seems, which is a title that I've loved forever, that I think applies directly to the Polaroids. But yeah, it's with AINT-BAD Publishing, based out of Savannah, Georgia.
Oh,
Great
cool.
photography publication, and the quarterly magazine, and they have done some amazing books, and they're on a roll. They're good stuff.
Yeah. When did is it out in the market now, or where could say I purchase, or uh, is it from their direct sites, or is it on different markets,
Yeah.
online markets?
So yeah, right now it's via the direct site. We just finished our pre-order, so now it's
Oh,
open
cool.
to the general public.
Hmm.
And but yeah, on ain'tbad.com. That's where to get it.
How long did it take you to piece together the monograph? Like,
So it was interesting because I mean, I've done zines and stuff like that with friends and whatnot, but I've never done a book before. So we started working on it last July, I believe, when
hmm,
I was in Montana for a while last summer, and we started working on it then. And it took from July till probably, let's see, the launch was in Houston when we could still travel, a few weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So, but yeah, great experience. I mean, it was really cool that my wife helped out big time, and the guys at AINT-BAD are amazing designers, an amazing amount of like information put into like how you actually make a book. And it was great that one of the people who wrote the essays, Lizzie Stein, who works at the Freer Sackler Smithsonian Institute, and it's been a lifelong friend, but she put together books when she was working in galleries in New York, and really helped me put this thing together.
Cool.
Because I mean, sometimes as an artist, it's just like it's almost like overwhelming.
Oh yeah, that's where I struggle too. Is like, how do I curate my own work? Like
Yeah,
it's so subjective, and you're in that bubble of like your own realm. It's like you need the outside perspective of new eyes, I guess, to kind of say, oh, that doesn't work with that. Put together the I guess have the continuity in the imagery and the storytelling. I guess, right?
yeah, and it was also great that it's less of that personal, sentimental, subjective kind of nature.
Mhm.
That they can actually, Lizzie, who's known my work since its infancy, she actually was able to look at the work and be like, you know what, that's not as important. I think this is more of a general theme that's going on. This is a better pairing, and we could really bounce ideas off of each other with like just good criticism, and no emotions involved as much.
Well, I read somewhere in college, post high school, you were initially studying psychology and sociology, and
Yeah.
circumstances had it that you transferred to Manhattanville College
Yep.
and took a class with uh, Randy. What was it?
Randy
Randy
Williams.
Williams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. I was originally I was determined to be pre med,
Mm.
and decided my junior year to switch to an art major, much to my parents' dismay. But you know, I came from a great family. That my mom's an artist, my dad's a photographer,
Oh,
so
cool.
really supported me. And yeah, I totally took a drawing class, took a painting class. Then it turned into sculpture. Then it was a minor. Then it was a major, and then I was sold.
Nice. What
Yeah.
what like I what really piqued your interest, or really said this is what I want to do? What was it about Randy that really said, "Aha, this is the path I want to choose," comparatively to med?
Well, the funny thing is that my mother being an artist, and in high school, I was not allowed to take art classes because she basically said, she was like, "Yeah, this is not the right time yet."
Yeah.
And she actually took a class with Randy back in the '70s when he taught at Lincoln Center down in New York.
Hmm.
And so once she knew I was taking a class with him, just coincidentally, she was like, "Yes, absolutely, take a class with that guy." And I think it was the general openness. It was the fact that ideas could be expressed without right or wrong, left or right, anything like that. It was entering into a comfortable, sort of gray.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, did you have any inclination to kind of live in the city, or have you always been like a bit upstate? Or
I've always been. I mean, some would say I maybe lived in the city for a little on St. Mark's and A,
Hmm.
when my cousin basically said, "If you're going to keep crashing on my couch, you got to pay rent." And that's when
Yeah,
I was like, "No way." Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I've always been really akin with nature. Big hiker. My wife is as well. So I'm always a little bit better, like separated, a little bit more quiet, more time to think.
now, when did you, post college, you went to SUNY as well with study at MFA, is if I'm correct.
Yep, singing meatballs.
And after that, what was the process like? You have your MFA. What do you do then? Like, how do you? What is the process like of I'm going to pursue a professional career in art or as an artist?
Yeah.
Um, what is that like? Because it's not direct like a corporate job, or it's like how do you get on this path? I guess.
It's not easy. So basically, coming out with an MFA, it's like, what on earth are you going to do? I did a degree in painting, and one of the greatest calls I ever made was that I couldn't get a job after school. And so I called a literal house painting company and said I had a degree, I had an MFA in painting. I never heard back from that company. So, but but yeah, I really have to give credit to the Aldrich Museum, which took me in as a guard. I started like guarding at the museum,
Hmm.
and basically from there, I happened to get an internship in the city too with the artist Tom Sachs,
Hmm.
who off of the website NIFA, it was just an anonymous call for an intern. I didn't know it was him,
Hmm.
but once I went in and interviewed, that experience changed my life. I mean, being in a real artist studio and like studying what he did, and I was like a sponge in there.
Yeah.
And who
Yeah.
knows if he even remembers me right now, but like I remember so much from the studio, and sort of working alongside other artists at the museum, going from guard to sort of like, exhibitions assistant and coordinator, and now I'm exhibitions manager. And I get to work with some of the people that I like studied about in college. So
Oh,
it's
that's
been an
amazing.
amazing thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was all sort of coincidence and just saying yes at the right moment.
It's funny. Back in Boston, I worked security at the Museum of Fine Arts,
Yeah.
um, and I was in command center though, so I was just surrounded by monitors and communications equipment, and I started off at 12 to 8, and that that was rough because I couldn't leave that room that I was locked in by myself, surrounded by monitors and machines, and just watching the perimeter of the building, which is obviously locked down. So it was like
Yeah.
people are like, "Is it like the night at the museum?" I'm like, "No, I'm it." far from it. I'm just surrounded by radiation. But I loved working in that realm, but I didn't interact with anybody. I was 12 to 8, and it was like
Yeah,
I'm a ghost, you know?
that's tough. That's almost like performance art in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah. But then I was like, I had all these kooky ideas of sketching, like working on my sketching at night. It was like I have to stay awake. I don't know, but yeah, I love those institutions. It's near and dear to me myself. But I had an inclination, just to pick up, and I had like this New York vision, and
Yeah,
um, without, like, for me, it's still been taken. I didn't have a direct vision of why I was coming to New York. I was more into tech and design at the time, like UX and UI
yeah,
stuff and post security stuff. And in 2016, I just had this vision of, oh, New York is calling me. So I tried the city, but had disastrous housing situations. And I met Melissa mid 2017 in the summer, and
yeah.
she saw I love to sequence my images just printed out at CVS. And she saw my photography and started pushing for me to shoot for Paste magazine, and that's how I kind of got into music photography. And I was like, I really want to investigate how artists transfer their energies from, just themselves backstage to performer on stage. And I started my series on contaminated sound of trying to, with the intent of, um, the intent of trying to capture those moments of purity prior to having that performer, I would say, persona. And and it's just grown into the series. So yeah, it's like I'm fascinated with people who knew, um, that had that really, like, I'm just going to do this vision and complete it to the fullest. And but I guess, your mediums find you. If the It's weird. Like you said, it's kind of like an intangible journey that, if you're meant to make stuff, it comes to you. And that's where my journey has kind of came to. And how did you get into, well, Polaroids, I guess? Like, how did you decide, like, when did you decide, I guess, you're going to use Polaroid as a medium, and then also add the mixed media on top of the Polaroids?
So, so basically, it was at Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York, that I started taking photographs late at night. It was I definitely have a good amount of insomnia. Let's say my psychiatrist does well because good amount of insomnia, anxiety, all that stuff. But I needed something to do with my energy, so I went out at night and started taking pictures of energy sources, and it may sound kind of dumb and mundane, but started taking pictures of like lights and outlets and things like that. And I didn't think too much about it. I just really enjoyed the subject matter. As you said, I just let it kind of come to me, didn't question too much. And after I had the pictures, I was like, you know what? There was something great. There was this energy of the moment, something that I remembered, something of the casual mundane that was interesting, but it had something beneath it, or it was almost like something that needed more information sometimes.
Mm,
So
mm.
that almost led to like a la Indiana Jones, like cutting through the surface, or like adding information on top. And when I was at Manhattanville, I can't say I was a printmaking major because I got kicked out of the print lab a whole bunch because I was messy as hell. But
Yeah.
so, but I loved inking dry plate etching plates, and
Cool.
so what I started to do is etch into these photos, and then I would like rub printing ink on top and then
Mm,
burnish it off, so just the ink was left in the grooves, just like an etching plate.
cool. Yeah.
But that's what I loved. It was almost like it needed some sort of like gestural, tangible energy on top of the actual image to really justify what it was.
Yeah, and you mentioned, in your statements and about the work, it's you know excavation of, you know duality of self. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, or
Nope, you're
if I
right.
mixed your words.
Oh no, those are some of my favorites.
Cool. So, can you talk about that duality? Is it your? Are you communicating the duality within yourself, or who? Which self is it? Is it a just abstract self, or is it yourself? Can you just go into that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely starts with myself
Mm,
because, and that's where it has to start, is the fact that, like, you know, a lot of the what I do is self portraits too, and it's actually taking you know, cutting away the face, which the first time you do that you have to diagnose if you're a psychopath or not.
yeah.
But but I mean, it was realizing, because in person I'm pretty jovial. I enjoy talking. I enjoy people and whatnot. And it's like, but on the inside there was different emotions going on that sort of needed exposing. It's like
Mm,
almost like the face was a mask, and what was underneath needed to be exposed more. And that sort of dual nature. And I thought about a lot of times with like Roman mythology of Janus, the god of like of war, peace, gates, that sort of thing. That like his gates were only open during wartime to talk about peace,
mhm.
and different things along those lines. And even Raskolnikov and Crime and Punishment, this
Oh
sort
yeah.
of idea of this sinner who really wants to be good. So I guess that's always what fascinated me. Being brought up Catholic, and since having abandoned that, also reinforces that sort of thing. So yeah.
That's interesting. I've throughout my conversations, I've noticed this pattern of "oh, we grew up Catholic" phrase, and then we kind of abandoned that. Same with me
Yeah.
too. So I'm Boston
Yeah.
Catholic, yeah, Irish Catholic, you know.
Oh
So
yeah.
okay, and you drop that quickly, and I I kind of relate to this idea of duality. Oh, I mean, I think we all should you know, as humans, we have these different selves, and it's um I'm sorry, I kind of I got too deep there. Then
No, it's
I
okay. Go with it.
get into myself.
Hey, hey.
So and I find it interesting that conflict within selves of like, am I doing good? Am I bad? Or you know, it's like you know this good evil thing, or yeah, like we have to put on different selves in different environments and social settings too. But it's like how do how do we deal with that internal conflict when we're alone? And uh, with your work, I've noticed it's really inflective too. So uh, it's like that's an interesting concept of or a study of how do we interact with our two selves. And the Polaroids really fascinating. I love the different you add the layers of media too, so it's not just the 2D surface of a Polaroid. It's you add the paint and the etching, and you kind of destroy what would be just a Polaroid, and you create this other world and that experience where a viewer would just have to go really close. That's it's really interesting as well. But
Well, no, thank you. That's, I mean, the idea of like a viewer going really up close, because you can see obviously behind me, Polaroids are, well, if you really want to know the size, I think they're 3.25 or 3.5 by 4.25 inches.
yeah,
But so it's one person or two people max can really look at them at the same time. So there's a moment of intimacy. And you know, in this sort of saturated market of art, that the bigger the painting, for some reason, the larger the gesture. I
mm,
really enjoy small art.
mm,
There's something to be said there, that if you can make a small piece that's that powerful, it can almost like overpower the 12 by 12 foot canvas or some crazy kind of thing.
yes, yeah.
Uh,
It's a different communication method, right? So I feel like, you know, you know, um, like the small image, say the Polaroid, forces one to look at detail,
yeah,
whereas say a large painting, or say even billboards, or murals, you can see it's more for public communication of, you can see at a distance. But with yours, you have so much detail within those cracks, the sketches, and the collage. It's like you have to just go really force yourself to look and study and understand the piece of work comparatively to just a large piece. And that's an interesting experience as well. Uh, could you talk about also your sculpture work, because I feel like that also is a nice comparison, or when you curate your shows, that you have the strips of Polaroids, framed or non-framed, and then you have the sculptures kind of hanging in a different space.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sculptures too. It's interesting because they kind of stand as these monuments or almost sentinel beings that are within the show.
Mm,
That I try to make them. I'm a little bit short of 6 foot. Would like to be a little taller, but I'm not. But they're around my height. So I want them to be these like strange, almost like beings that are accompanying the show, like almost like a visitor, but at the same time occupies physical space, which makes it. And the reason why I'm looking left is because if you'd like to see, we got,
oh, cool.
excuse the toilet paper, but but yeah, sculptures like that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
actually, I call that one spine
Mm,
because it was these leftover sort of bits of wire and screw eyes and things like that, that I made into this large, like almost like human spine,
yeah.
and got dipped in acrylic paint after that. And essentially what they are is they're these sort of bits of information, or I really like found objects, like given my work.
Yeah.
And so but in those found objects there's so much of a history, and maybe it's a history we know, maybe it's a history we're just projecting. But for these, it's like sometimes these moments of found objects, and they're not that significant, the ones I collect, they're cardboard, they're pieces of, like, wood, they're the screw eyes that I showed you in that are left over from an exhibition at the Aldrich that the artist didn't want them, so I
Mm,
took them.
cool.
But to me they were significant, and I guess they go to stand for that the moments in life that we think are most insignificant are sometimes what define us.
Mm,
And that really is something that I like to reflect on, almost like scholar rocks in Asian culture.
cool. Now, I I was looking through your site, or the images of the installed pieces, and it's fascinating. They looked like, kind of headless bodies, just kind of like hanging there, which was fascinating. I'm like, hmm, you know, it's like they also kind of look ghoulish too, like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I've gotten they definitely look like bodies. I mean, they sometimes they look like they've been hung. Like, it's like
yeah,
some sort of public hanging, which is I've always found interesting. That wasn't my intention, but I'm always open to new interpretations. And I mean, most recently I showed with my mentor Randy Williams, and his work is largely focused on being an African American in contemporary society. And I showed these sculptures alongside, and someone asked me if they looked like lynchings. And I almost didn't know how to respond because I was
hmm,
like, oh man, that is not territory I want to go into. But
yeah.
could it be considered? Yeah, it could. And in the context of the show, for sure.
Well, I was going to ask as well. Like I said, I kind of made the observation. It's more inflective pieces you do. Would you ever kind of do provocative kind of pieces, or like political, or you just stay away from that? Or
Oh, no, no, no. I definitely, I mean, I enjoy that. And especially, I think, in this political culture, and certainly, the state we're in right now with this contagion, I think it's needed. But what I've definitely touched on certain political aspects. Definitely the Catholic Church I've touched on, as they've touched on so many.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, no, 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 it definitely does. I think overall it's not the overall like arch of what I do, but it's certainly something I like to play with.
yeah. I had the starting in January. I had the fortunate experience to go to speak with the artist Ron English, and
Yeah.
super heady. We get into kind of like almost an hour and a half. His wife had to cut it off, but we get into this heady political conversation. You know, he's not shy of um, saying what he thinks regarding our current late capitalistic times and the political arena we've found ourselves in. So it was just a heady conversation. So I was kind of curious if you kind of lean that way, or just really just engage in your own world and your own work and not try to be overtly political. But um,
I think now's the time that you actually have to be a little bit political within whatever work you're doing. I mean, there's so much out there that's completely messed up, but yeah, it's not. A lot of the times it's a little bit of an introspective focus on myself, but yeah, the opinions that I have to come out, and they come
yeah,
out in the work for sure.
yeah. What drives you to create work? What has always driven you to just create? I guess, like, I always like to ask this question of why people do create. Like, what is, and why do you still create? Because you've had all these successes, and exhibits, and like, where do you see your work kind of evolving? And I guess that's a two-part question, but
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, yeah, why do we create? It's a very weird kind of thing. Like, I come down to my basement, which is I'm in right now, and I do work, and I think my life wouldn't be as complete without it.
mm,
And I really wouldn't understand things, whether it be political, whether it be social, whether it be like, within my own self. So yeah, it helps me better understand the world and that I live in.
mm,
And it's just, for me, I was in high school when I was a pretty successful runner. So being an athlete and being an athlete in college for a while, it almost gave me the basis of of just practice. And the sort of idea of like, you have to put in your practice and your drills and your footwork and stuff like that before you go to the actual meet. And I guess that's sort of the same thing. It's like, this just keeps you in shape in sort of a different way.
yeah, yeah. Could you touch base on like, what's the process like from going from your studio, you're creating your objects, to exhibition? Like, what's that process like as well?
That,
Um,
yeah, it's that's almost a tough process. It's almost like you want the works to just exist in the studio forever,
hmm,
um, which is because it's your own little world. It's a microcosm of you.
hmm,
Um, but yeah, it's to actually go into space and think like, what on earth am I going to do with this gigantic space? Um, it's tough. A lot of times, it I think the basis is that I always start in corners, which is
mhm,
kind of weird.
hmm,
But I always think about like corners of rooms as these moments where you can sort of like converge and go into this strange space. So I always start from a corner.
hmm,
And sort of a statement will start right there. And a lot of times it is the Polaroids, with what you said before. I
hmm,
think one of the shows you were referencing was I had at Westchester Community College, where I had like a row of Polaroids coming out. I think it was like 200 long or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And to actually go in there, it's like, okay, what sort of statement am I gonna make with that? But it is the idea of, it's almost like life being shown, like in a movie when you see your life before your eyes. That's what I've always thought the Polaroids as,
hmm,
and it just matters what those moments in life are. And I think it's almost like my shows are just where I'm at the current time.
hmm.
Maybe that seems naive, but it's true.
Do you have a sense of kind of like, I've talked to a lot of artists as well, just as friends, and a lot of I've met artists that are afraid to show their work too. They have this timidness. And how did you ever have that? Like, I'm scared to show my work, or this vulnerability of like, what if people judge my work too harshly, or that kind of self-doubt of like, what if the world doesn't rejects it or something?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, I certainly have that. I think most of the time I really enjoy showing my work, and I like getting it out there and talking about it, and I like the challenge of an exhibition, to put on something successful and to defend it to people, almost like, you know, in the way, I don't know, you defend a thesis or something like that. But I did have a show. It was the one I was speaking about with Randy, where I showed really personal works, and they were a whole new body of like new stuff. They were bigger. It was some sculptures. It was a light-based sculpture as well. It was just stuff that I wanted to experiment with,
Mm.
and I had to give an artist statement, like or like a little speech at the show, and I felt super vulnerable. And
Yeah,
that was this year, and I've been doing this for a decade plus, and
yeah.
that was the most vulnerable I felt, because a lot of the work was around my grandma passing away and her legacy towards me, who was a really important person in my life.
Mm.
And yeah, all of a sudden I felt super vulnerable. And yeah, it's interesting you asked that.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, going into any new territory, particularly as an artist, I feel um, when you're trying to push your work to a deeper level and you go into something unfamiliar, you still have this, you're like, is this, yeah, there's this weird feeling of like self doubt, I guess. So, like, but because it's just new, but you have to go there just to get beyond the point to progress, I guess, because if you just stayed in one stagnant, comfortable little world of creating, you never get to a higher level of investigation into your artistic manner. And that's what I've kind of observed through any artist I've met. And um, so that's fascinating. But it's always rough putting something out for the first time, and that's kind of like why I'm doing this series too. It's like I want to add a different layer to my own stills and push myself to like talk to a diverse range of people, uh, and just put myself in an uncomfortable situation, I guess. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, actually, I think it's interesting you touch on like uncomfortable, because I think there's so many good places that, like, you know, you have to be uncomfortable to make any work that's going to progress. I
Mm,
mean, and you have to fail so many times. And it's funny that I teach at Manhattanville now, and
mm,
in one of my sculpture classes that I told the students that I wanted them to fail.
mm.
And I got a note from one of the mothers. God knows how she got my email, but the next day saying, what on earth? You want my kid to fail?" Like, I
Mm.
was like, no, no, no. I had to explain. I was like, I think, like, you know, the best thing is that I don't care if students go as far as like pushing it over the edge that the piece is a failure. I was like, you know what? At least they went that far, and you're going to learn from that. Like, you
Yeah,
know, yourself being an artist as well. You have to fail so many times before you get anything that's of substance.
yeah, yeah. Did you ever come across the times where you're like, do I want to like continue trying this, or actually? So I guess kind of to go in reverse, you had MFA, you had SUNY. When do you
Mhm.
start exhibiting? I guess how do you? When was the point where you had the first show, and then it just how did the shows start building up from the
Hmm.
first show?
It's almost like I almost forget how it happened. But it's let's see, the first one. I think it was, I just started showing with friends. It's
Mm,
like, you know, like every artist community, you just kind of like, you have a bunch of friends. They're like, hey, you want to put on a show in some crappy venue? Yeah, of course you're gonna do it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's fun. And you kind of start learning from there,
Mm,
and then all of a sudden, you know, you're working with bigger venues, and but if you didn't have, it's almost like those early shows were the most sincere shows.
mm,
You were so super vulnerable, but you were in like a peer group of people who just wanted to get together, like, you know, see art and drink beer or something like that.
yeah,
And it's like that's awesome. And you know, I think at the root of it all, that's still what it's about.
yeah. It's just organic. Just we want to create something, it doesn't matter what, and we're gonna find a way to do it. I love that. And just to kind of wrap back to Tom Sachs,
Mhm.
did you take any uh kind of techniques from him, or like discipline too? Because I know he's really structured, and
Oh yeah, yeah,
I assume you must have taken like the military is like super structured, and
yeah. it's still, I still make my kids in my classes, I still make them watch the videos of like his 10 bullets for the studio, which
Yeah.
I have framed on my my office wall at work,
Mm,
which he gave me, that I had to read through the 10 bullets and abide by these, like, you know, these studio rules and whatnot. And I mean, it's slightly hilarious and it's great, but at the same time totally serious. And it's really, that's, I came through it like realizing how a contemporary artist, and he is massively successful and I love his work and just a crazy man and it's great. But he really taught me how one could have the discipline to run a contemporary art studio,
mm,
to come in daily and, like, you know, just like any of us would do a 9 to 5, to come in to the studio and how you would do that.
mm.
And I mean, the art can be a really wild world. It can be total like malleable. It can be really flexible and have your own schedule. But he ran it like a business. I still make my kids read this article from the New Yorker. I think it was called Saks and Co. And it's like basically like, you know, he ran it like a business.
Mm.
And I just learned so much from being there and sort of like the rigor and dedication needed to do this,
Mm.
and the rules. You have to set rules on yourself. It can't just be like, you know, this massive you know, sort of free kind of thing. You have to really have some dedication and rules to go places.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's like I know, with me too, yeah, like as an artist or a creative, or you have so many ideas that could just fluctuate in and out of your head, but then it's like, all right, we need to focus on one thing. And
Yeah.
what I've found difficult for me, at least, it's trying to discover my a system that works for me. And it's like, um, since I didn't traditionally go to art school, I have a degree in criminal justice and
It's
and,
great.
and a certificate in graphic and web design, I guess. So, but
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. But that's kind of touching base on the psychology too. I always wanted to be kind of when I was younger an archaeologist, and then I've kind of found that art covers everything, and it's sociological. It's kind of investigations. It's archaeology as well. It's and it's taken me. Yeah, I'm about 34 now to realize I'm an artist, but it's like years of kind of doing my internal struggle, and just recently I found my voice, and I'm fascinated uh, to learn how artists came to be and really identified and created their the extension of self, which is their work. And so where do you see down the road? Where do you see you taking your stuff? Like where does it evolve to? Does it evolve into a massive retrospective, say at MoMA or whatever? What do you see? Like, or what do you hope to kind of evolve what you've built so far? Where does that go?
Yeah, it's, I mean, I definitely, it's interesting because you always wonder what on earth you're going to do with all this stuff. I think that's the biggest question besides storage units.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, continuing to make work for sure, but yeah, I have more dreams of, like, you know, making work bigger and whatnot. And yeah, I'd love to do like, yeah, obviously a good like MoMA show or something like that.
Mm,
But at the same time, it's, if that all doesn't happen, I'd be perfectly fine with it.
yeah.
And just having this in my life makes me feel so much better about just creating and understanding a little bit more,
Mm,
and being able to share too. I mean, my teaching is a huge part of what I do, and I love sharing the ideas that, and, you know, freedom that art can bring to people. And I've seen it in some of my students. And if I just had my work and my teaching, I'd be perfectly fine.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I noticed too. I was gonna kind of lightly mention that, like, or ask about, uh, your teaching side of things, and also public speaking, or just engaging with the public regarding art, because it seems like you really love to communicate and about uh, artistic practice. And so, do you? Well, I don't know. I guess is the how do you balance that, like the creation, the teaching, the engagements, and also the museum work too? It's like, seems like you have like super busy um kind of schedule.
Yeah, it definitely is busy, but I mean, it's the one thing that I can't give myself too much credit in the fact that like fortunately all these feed each other.
Mm,
And maybe subconsciously I sort of set that up. I just saw opportunity and took it, and worked hard for it. But like, the museum work and working with artists, I wouldn't be the artist I am today if I didn't work with professional artists that are, at the Aldrich, that are really like on the actual like scene and whatnot.
mm,
And if I didn't learn things from them and continue to learn things from them, I don't obviously wouldn't be who I am. And that, in essence, also influences my teaching because I'm hands on, setting up exhibitions with these artists and planning and hearing their thoughts and just getting to them as people. And I think that influences it greatly. So each one feeds the other.
mm.
I don't know how I got in this situation that I'm so privileged to have that.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. I mean, that's I guess like an ideal scenario. You get to pick up, you know, you get to learn yourself from other artists, and then you get to give back. So it's the yin yang, the balance, and the circle coming complete. So that's perfect. So what would how have you been instructing your kids now, or with with the pandemic? Do you still have classes, or is it online
Yeah.
kind of stuff?
So sometimes we haven't done. I've planned some Zoom meetings like we're doing right now,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's been a lot of sending out basically like a PDF sort of assignment with. Typically, I do these in-depth PowerPoints and presentations on artists and projects ranging from the history to like contemporary kind of works, and where our current project is called the Weather Report, based on the exhibition that's at the Aldrich right now, that no one can see because it's closed.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, so it's based on weather. And so I kind of have been instructing them from a distance. And it's interesting because a lot of the students who are pretty amazing in class are continue to be amazing, but some of the people that maybe didn't have as much of a voice in public have a much greater voice through the online template.
Interesting.
And
Mm,
I've gotten some great stuff, myself being like a student athlete back in the day, from some of my athletes as well, who maybe don't have the confidence in class because they think that art and athletics don't mix. I beg to differ.
mm,
But I've gotten some great stuff from students that I didn't see coming.
mm.
It's been an interesting experience.
Now, you teach, is it painting or just visual arts in general, or is it
It's
specific
right now
medium?
I'm teaching contemporary sculpture.
Okay.
So I teach contemporary sculpture. Another class. This is the entire class: installation, public, and performance art.
Hmm.
Um, and then I have taught painting, 3D design. Yeah. So whatever they need me to teach, I'll teach.
Yeah, cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, so I guess like just to kind of maybe wrap things up a bit, just what would you say like your philosophy on life would be like, or do you have a mantra, or I know yeah, do you have like a just a whole philosophy, or that you just maybe even just say to yourself, or you would instruct your students, or a piece of kind of you know something, yeah, I guess philosophy you live by, I guess.
Yeah. It's that's interesting. I'm actually looking up because I keep notes up on the top of here, but the one that I've been concentrating on most is slow.
Mm,
So just I guess the idea of slowing down a little to look more inside, to and it's tough now with like all the media sources and all the social media and stuff like that, but to slow down and really think and kind of take moments not for granted and think about things just a little bit more.
mm,
That I think like things are so fast paced right now that sometimes obviously we're all having trouble keeping up right now. but to slow down and actually just think about something for a little bit longer,
Mm.
take another breath, and see what's underneath it all.
Well, I think that's where we've had the opportunity, the world itself, to say, yeah, well, there's an opportunity to say, can we live differently now? With like, do we need all this, transports? If you saw like the heat maps of, over
Yeah.
Europe or China, the
Yep.
pollution levels drastically dropping. It's like there's a lot of things I've recognized that with this pandemic, it was like I don't need to constantly go to a gym. That's I've been going to. I don't know if you know. It's a FDR's state park in
Yep.
York. Yeah,
Yep. I
yeah,
used to run all the time.
yeah. It's huge. So
It's a great park. Yeah.
yeah, so I've been just taking walks out there and trying to adjust because you know um, that's all we can do. But slow it down. Uh, Slowing anything down and lets us reflect. And gives us time, particularly as artists, to really reflect on our thoughts and to create. So cool, man. I
Yeah.
think I thank you for your conversation, and I'll let you get back to work. I wouldn't want to keep you. Um,
No, it's all good. This was great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about the work, and I hope to meet in person someday.
yeah, I know. Yeah, we're fairly close. I don't know once again, I don't know the region myself, but I certainly would love to check out the museum there too because
Yeah.
I'm still exploring upstate, or upstate, but I mean north of the city, I guess, right? But I'm finding all these little pockets of institutions and smaller museums up here, which are amazing. And yeah, I would
No,
love
that's
to. Yeah, hopefully we can connect again in
yeah.
person.
Please come by the studio. It's a good time, and museum and whatnot. There's and just to touch on the fact that like at the institutions just a little north of the city, I love the fact that you can go north of the city and there's these little places that you can almost take like a pilgrimage to and
Mm,
like check out art or check out like some music and stuff like that. And it's for some reason, maybe it's just because I'm up here and sentimental about it, but there's something really special about that to me.
mm. Yeah, yeah, it's a different atmosphere. Like just Kingston. No, is it Kingston's the sculpture part? That's amazing. The how Oh, Storm
Sure.
King. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm s- I'm from Mass, so
Oh, Kingston's got some stuff too. My family's from there originally,
oh,
so
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, but Storm King was. It's amazing space. But yeah, there's so much to explore when you get
Yeah,
out of the hustle and bustle of the city. But
yeah.
cool. Thank you so much. If you could just if I could request post recording a snap, like I've been trying to
Oh
snap
yeah.
people via our new world, and capture via my camera how we exist and interact in this current state of things. So um, I'll end recording here, but once again, thank you so much and good luck with promoting and pushing out the monograph as well. And
Thank you so much, Rob. That was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
let's just, I always stop recording. But there we go. Oh, no, that's,
Yep.
oh,
Now you're an R.
can you hear me? Oh,
I can hear you.
oh man.